Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS. Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Greetings, race fans, and welcome to Apex Racing TV's presentation of the Radical Esports Cup. J.R. Gregory here with you on the call. Beside me, my partner, Aaron Smith, and in the production carrier, pushing your buttons and twisting your knobs, our longtime producer, Joshua Wilkie. And the star of today's show, the fantastic Radical SR10. This car is one of the purest sports car experiences on iRacing, propelled by a Ford EcoBoost 4-cylinder turbo, putting down 450 horsepower, tipping the scales at a full 1,000 pounds lighter than an MX-5 Cup car. no traction control, no anti-lock brakes. The SR10 is a handful, but mastering this car will make you better in every car that you drive. And folks, we are showing the top split of the public server here today, 2100 GMT, as we do every Friday. This is not a league or private event. So if you would like to appear with us here on Apex Racing TV, buy this card, get some practice laps in, show up and sign up. And if you make the top split, you will appear with us here with some of the best radical drivers in the world. And our upcoming schedule is fantastic. Donington Park, Watkins Glen, Virginia International Raceway. That's going to be a great one. Road America, Sebring, and Interlagos. But this week we are at 2024 season 4 week 7. We've taken a 1,000-kilometer trip from Navarra in Spain to Portimao in Portugal. This track opened in 2008 and is current host to Grand Prix Motorcycles, World Superbikes, European Le Mans, and is a past host of the Formula One Portuguese Grand Prix and the World Endurance Championship. The Algarve International Circuit, or Portimao, is 4.6 clicks in length, or 2.5 miles, 15 corners, and perhaps not surprisingly, the race lap record of 118.750 was set by Lewis Hamilton in 2020. And Aaron, I had an opportunity to get out here on track during practice a little bit ago, and I can tell you, we kind of go into broken record mode talking about how these cars tend toward understeer, but not this week. This fixed setup has a little more rear bar than I like, I'll be honest with you, and it is quite wiggly in the rear end. It's a very tricky track, very hard on tires, so we are going to see some drama today. What do you think?
I think you're spot on with that last bit. Drama is probably going to be a bit inevitable at this track, especially on that first lap. I mean, Portimao is one of the most opportunistic, movers you have to be on that first lap. There's not a huge amount of overtaking opportunities during the normal race session. So during that first lap, when you're all slow speed, still trying to suss each other out, you're on a bit of colder tires than you'd like, and full fat fuel as well in these radicals. It's the best time to just send it up the inside a lot of these slow speed corners. But like you were talking about, this car looks like a handful this week, especially in that practice session that we saw just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, it is absolute madness, and we're going to get that grid up for you in just a second. But really good point, Aaron, on making a move in the early going. And when I hear about early aggression, I think Heinz Braun. So we'll keep an eye on him coming into this first difficult complex. But there is your starting grid. Andre Castro showing up again and laying down the law with a 138.3, folks. That is absolutely cooking. He'll be lining up next to Fran Labrada there in P2. In row 2, James Barry will be next to frequent flyer Jorge Gonzaga, and behind them, Reitinen and Kim Andre Bjorklund. There is Heinz Braun in P7. Keep an eye on him. If there's an opportunity, if there's a sliver of light, Braun is going to stuff that radical down the inside, so we'll keep an eye on what he does off the start. Timothy Larson will be next to Braun in P8. Jacob Goebbels in P9 next to Gabriel Berger in 10. It'll be Samir Kadura versus with George Robinson there in P11 and 12. And in the following row, it is Kjetil Larson next to Jay Lawrence. Lear next to Coutinho, Silva, Cashwell, and Day will bring up the rear. And there is the start. My goodness, talk a little bit too much on that one. And there is Castro. You see him covering the inside from Barry. Or actually, Castro lost it. My mistake. That's Labrada and Barry have pushed their way past Castro. And Barry sniffing around here, trying to get a piece of Labrada. But yeah, there's the early jump, Aaron, that you were talking about.
That was a fantastic start for Labrada. He just shot away from the line. James Barry as well, now going for a move on Labrada as we're talking about it, down into turn 5. And look at this, nearly going 3 wide. Reitinen very lucky there to avoid contact with, I believe that's Robinson, who was just behind him. Look at that, Barry just about keeping ahead of Labrada. And now look at Castro, who of course had an absolutely terrible start. Has already lost 2 places, and honestly I'm not sure that starting on the front row of the grid is the best thing to do, as James Barry, starting on the second row, has jumped ahead of these two. Now Castro and Labrada going side by side. Labrada washing out to the exit of turn 11, and I think he lost out to Castro there in the end. Now comes back up the inside as we head into turn 13. bit of a tricky few corners this. So much undulation. There's a near spin in the background for Heinz Braun. Just about kept it in a straight line. A lot of drivers really struggling on this first lap. And that is Heinz Braun going for another spin again. And he's very lucky not to make contact with anyone else. He's spun about 3 times in the space of 3 corners and has lost a huge amount of places, down to 16th. And, well, you kind of jinxed him there, JR. Talking about him jumping up the order, he's done the exact opposite there.
Yeah, giving him the absolute thermonuclear commentator's curse there. I will owe Mr. Braun some schnitzel after that. He has plummeted 8 positions from his starting position. And meanwhile, up front, we talked about Castro and Labrada. Castro has managed to stick it back through. So now it's Barry from Castro, from Labrada, from Bjorklund, from Gonzaga. And as you can see here, folks, this track, the design, absolutely diabolical. When you are wanting to squeak out that extra half of a second, couple of tenths here and there, you have to take risk. It is a high risk, high reward track. A lot of corners that are off camber, a lot of apexes that are blind over risen. You see it right there, a little wiggle from Berger trying to put the power down, coming out of that second gear corner there. My goodness. And it is definitely wildness here with this stiff rear end that they gave us on these radicals this week, and we're going to see a lot more action. And up front, looks like Barry and Castro dicing back and forth. They're side by side. I see it on the leaderboard there, and there they are. And Castro looks like he's stuck it down the inside here, and another place there and to keep our eye on. And I think we may be approaching it here. Yeah, that long right-hander, that's actually 2 right-handers in a row leading onto the front straight. Critical to get a good run down the front straight, but puts the heat in the left side tires in a big way. I don't think you can flog that corner or that sequence every time on every lap and make it all the way through 15 laps here without causing some serious damage to those tires. So many things for these drivers to juggle at this very challenging course.
Yeah, 100%. It's a track that you don't really think of as being too difficult until you actually drive it. You know, you take a look at a track map and, you know, it seems simple enough, doesn't seem too bad. But then you drive it and it's just completely not what you were expecting. That was James Barry nearly running into the back of Castro. That could have been disastrous for both of them. Don't know how on earth he avoided contact there. I think this front, like 4 cars are just really struggling to follow each other around this circuit. It's kind of medium to high speed and then kind of breaks down into these slower speed corners in this middle part of the lap, and it can make just following each other super difficult and taxing on the mind, and it's jarring physically. And you were talking about the tires as well. That's incredibly stressful on those right hand side, well, to be fair, those left hand side tires, my apologies, as Labrada there eyeing up a move on James Barry. Wasn't quite close enough to go for it there. And the good thing this week is it doesn't look like anyone is kind of the out and out quickest. Labrada and Castro set the exact same time when they were fighting for pole. It's just Castro set the time first, hence why he started first. James Barry, I think, was only about a 10th behind. So we could get some very close racing all the way up until the end of these 15 laps. And there's fastest lap for Castro, but the slipstream down that main straight is going to keep Barry, Labrada and Bjorklund all within tabs of that number 1 United States car.
Yeah, a little train forming up front there, and it is Castro from Barry, from Labrada, from Bjorklund, from Gonzaga, and a significant gap behind them to P6, George Robinson, who is looking like the hard charger as we speak, has moved up 6 positions. But and here's Reitinen looking forward at Robinson. And speaking of aggression, Solly Reitinen not shy at all. So if he sees a sliver of light developing, Robinson needs to be playing some defense, keeping an eye on that rearview mirror. Some great camera work here. Here's that tough second gear right-hander. The power comes on when that turbo spools up, right when you're trying to get the car to accelerate out of that one. Such a tough track, but really enjoyable. You nail some of these corners, it is such a blast. And look at this right-hander feeding on the power. The track drops away and you haul the male down that hill, and we're getting close to the end of the lap here now. Maybe we'll stay with Wrighton in here for just a moment and see this double right-hander. So this is second to the last corner. You got to be patient here. Patient. It's off camber at the beginning, then cambers up, heading into that one so you can feed on the throttle. And here's that last corner, blind apex. You can drive on that yellow, but you want to stay off of them in these radicals. And that's a beautiful view of the latter half of a lap here at Portimao, along with Sully right in and up front. Again, it is Castro from Barry, from Labrada, from Bjorklund. Barry, with the aid of the slipstream, just threw down the fastest lap of the race at a 1:38.33. He's tickling qualifying times now after only 5 laps. So exciting stuff, as I was expecting.
Yeah, I just hope it keeps that way all the way until the end of the race. It does look like Castro has kind of put his foot down at the moment, as that's Labrada eyeing up a move into turn 5, probably the best overtaking opportunity on the track. But Barry did get quite a nice exit, but not good enough to keep tabs with Labrada. And now he's back into second place. The man who was closest to Castro in that qualifying session, is he going to be able to challenge him for the lead of the race over these last 11 or so laps? As it does look like he was struggling there through turns 8 as we head into turn 10 and 11. It's just such a difficult track, this. It requires a lot of practice, a lot of attention to detail around here. And of course, we're in a fixed setup race, so this is something they don't have to think about. But in every other series, honing in the setup is quite important here, especially if you're going longer distance and you need to conserve those tires. But luckily, these guys don't have to worry about that. They just turn up, get in the car, and they just drive. But like we were mentioning earlier on, the setup this week seems to be a bit on the sketchier side. The rear of the car definitely seems a lot stiffer than I think a lot of people would like. And, you know, going from most other tracks this season where the car's been heavily understeery, and this week it's suddenly very snappy. And especially at a track like this, it's not really the track you want the car to be. Rear, stiff, and very snappy going through those high-speed corners. As that's Cadora going for an optimistic move into turn 1, and that was Coutinho going for a spin in reaction. I don't think there was any contact between those two, but I do think Cadora was counting his lucky stars to go for that move, and was lucky to not get involved in an incident with Coutinho. But I can't imagine the Iberian driver's going to be very happy about that one.
Yeah, Coutinho saw that flash of pink out of the corner of his eye, made him clench up a little bit. You saw him go sliding off, and yeah, you're too right about the fine details and nuances of this course, Aaron. And it is a relatively new track on the iRacing service, so it's not a track that these guys have been doing hundreds of laps on over the years, and they're still even these top drivers are still finding tents here and there as they hone their craft out here at Portimao. But you see Castro beginning to pull a little bit of a gap there. He's got almost a second on Labrada at this point. Labrada also gapping Barry, and so that front group still about 3 seconds behind, but they are starting to spread out a little bit here as we begin lap 7 of 15. And at some point, people who have been asking too much of those left side tires over those last couple of corners, that is turn 15 particularly, really puts the heat in those tires. So people who have been asking too much of those tires are going to start seeing the ill effects of that, I would think, sometime in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, there's not too many left-handed corners at this track, and those left-hand Michelins are going to be screaming out for help come the end of the race. But I think these types of races are just short enough to the point that they can get away with it, as that was Labrada struggling for rear traction coming out of turn 5, and seems to be just struggling a touch, a lot more than I thought he would be. I was expecting him to catch Castro a lot more than he is. I mean, in fact, Castro is starting to pull away slowly, especially on this lap. So maybe we will see James Barry coming back at Labrada, perhaps even this lap, as of course they don't want to let Castro just run away with it like he so often does. They want to actually fight the man for a victory, as Castro every single time he ends up in first, it usually stays that way. So they need to do something about it, and they need to do something fast.
Yeah, and you're right. A little wiggle there by Labrada, and you can see Barry kind of closed him down a little, but that gap's starting to stretch again. Barry had him down to about 0.3 in the middle of the lap, and Labrada has extended that now to significantly more than that. And, we saw Labrada get loose on exit of one of those corners, and that's another kind of interesting thing that I've found in my limited practice time out here is you can see a lot of the cars getting off outside the white lines onto some of the painted surfaces, which is legal in many instances, as you see right there, for example. But the traction on those painted surfaces isn't the same everywhere. So you have to individually learn which spots are safe to put the hammer down and which aren't. I'm not really sure why that would vary, but it definitely does. So that may have caught Labrada out a little bit there. And again, middle of the lap, Barry seems to be closing that gap down a little bit as Castro is kind of enjoying watching these two go back and forth in his rearview mirror. He's now extended that gap to 1 full second, and as you said, Aaron's beginning to drive away.
I do really think that Barry looks very, very good in this middle part of the lap. I mean, I say that he's just completely missed the apex of turn 11, but apart from that last corner, he looks really, really quick through here. I think it's just the first sector where Barry seems to be struggling the most, as he does tend to just lose a little bit of time. And I also think that these last 2 corners as well, he's struggling ever so slightly on. And so the gap at the top is very weird. I think without the slipstream effect on this main straight, I would think that Castro probably would be about 1.5 seconds ahead, but because it's just so powerful, it's the only reason that Labrada and Barry are still somewhat in tabs with Castro, as that's a wiggle for Labrada, and he really is struggling round here. We're on lap 9 out of 15, still got 7 to go, and maybe he is starting to struggle with those tyres already, and he just hasn't looked comfortable in that radical this entire race. And he might have set a good qualifying lap, but at least where it matters, he's just not putting down the laps that he probably should.
Yeah, and I'm thinking he may be flogging the car a little too much through that 14 and 15, and that might be what's creating the gap toward the end of the lap. But like I said, it really, really heats up the left side tires to the point where my crew chief software was warning me about that when I was on track, that I was roasting those left-hand tires. So that, for a momentary gain there on getting a little extension of his gap onto the front straight, it may be costing him here in the middle of the lap. And you see Barry driving, as always, calm, collected, and smooth, and keeping that gap where he needs it. He's been maintaining it about 0.3 throughout the middle part of the lap, and you got to think he's going to be calculating and eyeing up a move on Labrada at some point here, especially if Labrada keeps struggling. You see the rear end of that radical wiggling a couple times a lap, and Labrada fighting to keep that car on the track.
He doesn't really look like he's in tune with his radical as much as some of the drivers around him. And I would definitely expect that once he falls out of the slipstream of Castro, I think Barry will soar on past. And then it's just a question if Barry has enough time to maybe, possibly catch back up to Andrea Castro. It's about 1.4 seconds now between Castro and Labrada. So that gap is just growing ever more. And potentially it's good for Barry, which means he might be able to go for a move. He does look quite close here, actually. And it will be brave, but he might try and go for it into turn 5. But no, just a tiny bit too far back on this occasion. And look how much time he gains through there. Another 10th. He's about 2 tenths behind Labrada coming through this middle section of the lap. And, well, the problem with the middle section of the lap here at Portimao is there's nowhere really to overtake at all. I mean, just look how much quicker James Barry is than Labrada on this lap, and Castro is just pulling away now. I mean, it's just a matter of time now as to where James Barry makes that move, and you can just see him using the rear of the car there to move his way through the corners. He's barely actually steering the car. He's kind of just using the rear brakes as to his advantage, and possibly the rear stiffness of this car this week to just push the rear of the car through the corner and try and gain some extra speed through those high speed corners. And now Labrada is pretty much out of the slipstream of your race leader. So Barry didn't have a great last sector, admittedly, has dropped off a little bit. And perhaps using the rear of the car too much and overheating the car slightly. But he is gaining closer and closer. And I think possibly next lap, if he can hook it up nicely, this could be a second place for James Barry. I think Castro's just too far gone now.
Yeah, I like Barry's chances with Labrada there. He's definitely closing him down and eyeing him up. And meanwhile, quietly, Kim-Andre Bjorklund closing that gap down. He's got James Barry down to about 6/10. So while Barry's looking ahead at Labrada, Bjorklund slowly catching up here. And we'll look back through the mid-pack here, riding along with Kettle Larson. That's Larson looking forward at Lawrence. And here is that turn 5. We saw Labrada outbrake James Barry into this hairpin. Very, very tough place to be late on the brakes. You're going very fast there, deep into 5th gear and downhill without anti-lock brakes. So that was a huge move by Labrada, and you saw it cross Larson's mind there, but thought better of it. And this is another thrilling corner right here when you get this one right. So tough to go to put the power down across that apex. Due to the off-camber nature of the track, which is present in many of these corners.
It's the off-camber nature, the blindness of the track that just seems so intimidating to new and experienced drivers alike. And it really does provide a good challenge, I'd say. It's not difficult in terms of, oh, I'm worried I'm going to crash. It's just about the speed. You're just worried about your own confidence through a lot of these corners. And some of the curbs at this track as well can be quite punishing. The biggest one, of course, down at turn 1, where if you just clip the inside curb, you're just heading for probably Estoril, most likely, as Gonzaga going for a pretty simple move there on Robinson, as Robinson actually did hit that inside curb that I was talking about, but somehow managed to make it work to his advantage and managed to get back into 5th. That was a great tussle between those two for 5th.
Yeah, really good. We're going to ride along with Robinson here. Here is the replay. Gonzaga is going to have the inside here, and Robinson just takes a breath, catches the car there, and gives him the inside out to maintain that position after giving it up briefly to Gonzaga. Really nice driving by Robinson, and Robinson here is leading another train. That's Robinson from Gonzaga, from Reitinen, from Berger, and those cars have all trained up about a 1.5 gap covering those 4, and Kettle Larson trying to sneak up on the back end of that one. Possible that Robinson is holding these guys up, but will lead to some great racing, and I reckon that Gonzaga fancies another move on Robinson before this one is over. Currently lap 12 of 15.
Gonzaga definitely looks like a very feisty driver today. I think Reitinen was the driver who was initially behind Robinson, but Gonzaga's put down some really, really nice laps over the past about 4 or 5 times we've gone around this Portimao circuit, and he is super, super close now. This is the closest that he has been so far, and surely should make his way past with ease, as the slipstream really is that powerful. But Robinson's still going to try and defend this one nonetheless. Perhaps Gonzaga might try the outside this time if he fancies it. Where is Gonzaga going to go? And there he goes round the outside. It's a risky one and requires the cooperation of both drivers, but Robinson just about had the speed to stay ahead of Gonzaga, and Reitinen now trying to see if he can sneak anywhere, get some positions, but just nothing doing in those first few corners. But Gonzaga really, it is a difficult track to overtake this, and I don't know if necessarily turn 1 is the best one to do it, as that's Gabriel Berger trying to make his way past Reitinen, but didn't quite manage to get alongside enough, but might be able to do it here actually, but that just was not brave enough on the brakes into turns 8, as he got very close to Reitinen there. As now this middle part of the lap, you just kind of have to settle down and follow the car ahead. There is really no opportunities around this middle part of the lap, as well. He looked for one there into turn 10, but there was no space there whatsoever. And, well, that's what I was talking about. You can try and make yourself some space and try and go for these moves in this middle section of Portimao, but I promise you, it's 9 times out of 10, it's probably not going to work.
Yeah, and my goodness, great driving up and down this grid as we see week in and week out. You see in that train that runs from P5 to about P8, there's dicing, there's excellent car control, side-by-side racing, epic moves going on, and that's really what we see in this Radical Esports Cup week in and week out. And there is Robinson, he's managed to gap Gonzaga a little bit, and Reitinen and Berger coming up behind, and now Berger looks like he's in pretty good position. Here's Kettle Larson looking forward at Berger, speaking to him. So here's another really difficult, this left right here, you want to put down the power right as the track fades away. You see Kettle Larson catch that Radical as it starts to over-rotate there. And again, this is that hairpin. This one is tough driving alone, and super tough to try to stick it down the inside there. We only saw that once so far, and really takes mastery of these non-ABS equipped Radicals. But yeah, fantastic racing here. And my goodness, look at that lap timer. We are already up to lap 14 out of 15. And yeah, this race here, Portimao, has not disappointed.
No, definitely not so far. And hopefully it will continue to please, as we've got about just over 1 lap to go, as Castro's just got the final corner to round, and then he will begin the white flag lap. But what we're trying to pay attention to is who is going to get second place. I do think Barry is just struggling way too much in that final sector to really get close enough. And in the background, he looks close, but he's still not really close enough to go for him if he's about a car length or two just too far back. And I think Barry just kind of has to send it. That's definitely an off track, as he's pushing the car very, very hard on this last lap. And I will not be surprised if maybe he tries to go for a move down into turn 5. He's going to try and take as much speed through here as Labrada takes the off track on the outside. And I don't blame either of them. He's trying to look up the inside, late on the brakes, but still nothing doing for James Barry. And he's just going to try and have to force Labrada into a mistake. They're going side by side now. That's unexpected. I wonder if Labrada struggling on the exit of turn 5, and he does have the inside line, very favorable into turns 8. And James Barry, I think turn 10 could be his next and last opportunity to go for a move. Is he going to go for it? Looking up the inside is James Barry, but Labrada shuts the door on him. No space to go through there, James. You're going to have to pick another opportunity to go for one. I guess turn 13 might be a decent opportunity, but Labrada's nice and late on the brakes. Goes a touch wide, though, but we'll have the inside line for turn 14. Tucks in nicely, and I think that could potentially be it between these two for second place.
Yeah, that is going to end it, and relentless pressure from James Barry there. Outstanding defense from Labrada, and all clean, all fair. Barry just couldn't quite get close enough to overcome that defense, and so that's going to be your top 3, Castro, Labrada, and Barry. And as we watch the rest of the field come through, Bjorklund, Robinson, Gonzaga, Reitinen, Larson, Berger, and Braun, looks like they're going to make up the top 10. And as we wait for the field to come across, Aaron, let me go real quickly through the top 10 on the season. We're about halfway through, and our top 10 is Barry, Gonzaga, Braun, Friedrich, Reitinen, Paki Caruso, Larson, Sorensen, Scott Lear, and Samir Kadura. So if you take a look at that top 10, we have got the majority of them out here at our 2100 GMT Friday broadcast. So you really do see some of the best Radical drivers in the world when you join us for these broadcasts. And there we see Jay Lawrence coming across the line, Gerbel, Lear, and Silva behind, and Caswell still running but a lap down, and a little bit of carnage this time. Looks like we lost about 3 cars maybe were binned in this one. A little unusual. Oh, and here's a nice move across the line. Oh my goodness, did that count? Was that a position there? Was that Coutinho getting past Jay Lawrence at the line, and maybe caught Lawrence napping out of that last corner, and Coutinho puts the hammer down, and I'm going to show my bad American education. I don't know what that flag is, but it could be Spain, Portugal. I don't know. He could be making a defense of his home track here, but really good move there at the line by those two. Iberia. Okay, well, see, like I said, educated in the U.S., I just see some different colors and take a wild guess. But Aaron knows those flags, so I should just let him address those. But in any event, speaking of Aaron, we're going to have those final results for you in just a moment, and Aaron will run through those with you. And thank you for joining us. What a great race.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was a bit of a shame that we couldn't have such a tough battle for the lead, but Castro, as usual, just makes it look so easy. Up at the top, 2.5 seconds in the end from Labrada. It's so weird that they were neck and neck in qualifying, but just in the race, Castro seemed to have that extra legs, that extra race pace, which is so important. And he managed to win by a very convincing margin. But like I said, Labrada ended up second in the end, exactly where he started. Barry probably a bit disappointed as he was in the lead at the end of the first lap, so he definitely should have capitalized probably a little bit better on that opportunity. Bjorklund, an underrated drive by him. He just stuck himself in fourth and kept tabs with the two cars ahead of him and didn't really say or complain. Just got a cheeky fourth place, and will take it and run away all the way to the bank. Robinson, good defensive drive from him, up into fifth. Gonzaga in sixth. Brighton in seventh. Larson eighth. Berger ninth. Braun in 10th. Coutinho with a cheeky move on the last lap, just about to overtake Lawrence, who finished just behind in 12th. Goebel in 13th. Lear in 14th. Silva in 15th. Cashwell 16th. Larson in 17th. Cadora finished in 18th, and then Jason Vaughn 19th, and Simon Day, who I don't think actually turned up in the end, was 20th and last.
Wow, well, there we have it. Man, oh man, that was an excellent race. And James Barry, looks like he is doing us the courtesy of stop by the booth to share his insights into this. And we always enjoy speaking with James. James, my first question for you has to do with this setup. I was out there a couple times this week, and my goodness, the rear end of this Radical seemed just a hair stiff for this track. So how was the car driving for you out there?
Yeah, that was the first thing on my mind finishing that race. I've been driving open setup all week because I do a league that uses open, and I was softening the rear for that. I was really playing around with the rear and really having success softening the rear ARB and the springs. And then to come here to this setup, like, man, it's so tricky to drive, like really tough. I was just struggling all race. We're just struggling to keep the car in a straight line. I could tell that Andre and Fran were managing it as well, and it was a race of attrition in a sense that we were all just making little mistakes. And yeah, as you say, yeah, they're really quite difficult to drive.
Yeah, definitely a handful, and there's so many high risk areas where, you know, you just have to put the power down to stay competitive, but you never know when the car is going to snap. So yeah, it was quite a handful. And talk to us a little bit about that defense from Labrada. It sure looked like you had a couple of cracks at him, but he was able to keep you behind. So how was he able to do that?
Yeah, I couldn't keep up with him at the end of the lap, so I was having to catch up to him kind of in the technical bits, and then obviously he knew where to put the car on the last lap there. Like, I really was just trying to like crack away at him, trying to force him into little mistakes, and he was making some little mistakes, but it wasn't enough to get past. And yeah, as I said, I just couldn't keep up with him on the back straight, so wasn't able to pass him there. But yeah, he did a good job. Fair play to him, and well done to Andre as well, because he, as I say, he was also clearly struggling with the setup, but he managed to do a better job of it than we did, so fair play.
And, you know, we've had two very interesting tracks kind of back to back here in Spain last week and in Portugal this week, and kind of added some nice, some freshness to the series. What are your thoughts about this season schedule? I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I really enjoy these tracks. They take some learning, because I certainly did a good 2 or 3 hours learning this track to get it really good. And playing with setup as well, because as I say, in open setup, like, you can do a lot more with the car, make it nicer to drive. Here, really difficult, but really fun learning the track. And yeah, last week's was also a new challenge. So I really enjoy these new tracks, and I wish more people would kind of just spend a little bit of time just to learn the tracks and then come join us on the grid. Although I know, obviously, with iRacing's pricing model, that's always a bit of a barrier to people. They don't want to buy a track that they're only going to drive once and then potentially never drive again. So it's a bit of a shame that it works like that. But yeah, for me, like I'll always enjoy coming to these tracks for sure.
All right, on to you, right, James. And well, thank you again for stopping by to speak with us. And as we wrap up, is there anyone you would like to thank or give a shout out to today?
Just shout out to you guys. Was it a good race?
It really was. We had some. You guys had a 5-car pack up at the front with a little nose showing, not a ton of action. There was another 5-car pack behind you, kind of similar. And Aaron pointed out as we were starting, the early moves tended to really stick, and there wasn't a lot of passing once everybody got in the rhythm. And I think that's kind of what happened to you with Labrada when he stuck it down the inside of turn 5 and made that tough pass into the hairpin, and that kind of just got him second, and the rest of it was just defense. So that's kind of how the race unfolded, but it was definitely exciting to watch people fighting these cars, the in-car particularly, multiple opposite locks on every lap just to keep the car on the track. So it sure looked like some calories got burned up out there today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, I think next week Donington Park will be a little easier to drive, and yeah, so hopefully will be a good one next week as well.
All right. Well, cheers, James. Thanks so much for stopping by. And we may have someone else down here. Can take a quick peek. And yeah, we'll catch you next week, James. Thank you.
Yeah, see you. Bye.
Yeah, it looks like we may have. All I see is the letter A. It may be Castro, though, Aaron. So I'll go ahead and drop him up here and see what he's got to say.
Well, you are correct. You guessed correctly. It's Andreas Castro who can come and have a chat with us, Andrea. Well, there's a little bit more to talk about than usual, but still ended up the same way. You ended up winning by a pretty convincing margin, but it wasn't super easy this time around. That first lap was a bit of a struggle for you. Just talk us through that. Andrea? Well, I don't think Andrea's in a talking mood, unfortunately.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, he's here. I see his icon, but his mic is muted, so we'll talk to him next time. But man, this weekend, more good stuff coming up. We're not just about those radicals here on Apex Racing TV. The weather cooling off and the racing heating up on Monday. The Rickman-Tech Mini-Mite Sports Car Challenge will be at a track that I didn't put in my notes. Brilliant. And on Halloween night, round 5 of the Apex Racing League Prototype Championship will take place at Spooky Sebring. So don't forget to subscribe to Apex Racing TV and hit that notification icon so that you don't miss any of the action. We've got some of the best esports drivers, best cars, and best tracks in the business coming at you 7 days a week. So make sure that you keep up with us. And as we conclude here, thank you so much for joining us here on our broadcast today from Portugal. And happy Friday, and have a fantastic weekend.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.